8 people locked in a wooden boat for more than 10 months, unable to open the door, unable to go out for fresh air, only one 45-centimeter window for the entire space, and more, sharing this confinement with thousands of animals of all species on the planet. Could you survive such a situation without going crazy, without fighting with your family, without giving up on everything? What you will discover about how Noah and his family managed not only to survive, but to maintain order during this impossible period will impress you.
How long must we
300
stay
cubits
inside?
long, 50 wide, 30 high. These measurements, recorded in Genesis chapter 6, reveal something surprising about the space available to Noah and his family. Converting to meters, we're talking about 135 meters in length, 22 meters in width, and 13 meters in total height. That seems like a lot of space, doesn't it? But wait until you discover how that space was actually divided. The ark had 3 decks, first, second, and third deck, as specified in Genesis 6, verse 16. This means that each deck was approximately 4 meters high. Now imagine, you have 3 levels, each with the area of a small football field. Sounds comfortable for 8 people, right? The problem is that those 8 people weren't alone. Along with them were representatives of all species of animals on Earth. Genesis 6, verse 20 makes this clear. Of birds according to their kind, and of animals according to their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth according to its kind. We're talking about birds, mammals, reptiles, from small birds to the largest land animals of the time, all sharing the same 3 floors with Noah's family. And here comes a detail that changes everything about how you imagine life inside the ark. Genesis 6, verse 16 mentions a very specific window. You shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it to a cubit from the top. A cubit is approximately 45 centimeters, so we're talking about an opening of only 45 centimeters high that ran all the way around the vessel on the upper deck. This was the only source of natural light and ventilation for the entire 3 floors for more than 10 months. Think about it, a 45-centimeter window to illuminate and ventilate a space the size of 3 stacked football fields full of animals and 8 people. How did they manage to breathe? How did they see to care for the animals on the lower decks? How did they maintain any family privacy? But perhaps the most impressive detail about their confinement is recorded in Genesis chapter 7, verse 16. And the Lord shut him in from the outside. God himself closed the door of the ark. This means that Noah and his family had no way to open the door on their own. They were literally locked inside, completely dependent on God to decide when they could leave. Now you must be wondering, 8 people managed to feed thousands of animals for more than 10 months without dying of exhaustion? How did they organize the food so that nothing rotted? And most importantly, how did they prevent predators from devouring the prey during all that time? Imagine having to prepare meals for thousands of guests every day for more than 10 months. Now imagine that these guests include lions, bears, snakes, birds, herbivores, and carnivores, each with completely different dietary needs. Some eat meat, others only leaves. Some need fresh fruit, others survive on seeds, and you have to keep them all well fed without any dying of hunger or malnutrition. How did Noah manage to solve this impossible logistical puzzle? The answer lies in a very specific order that God gave him, but which reveals a much more complex plan than you imagine. Genesis chapter 6, verse 21 records the divine instruction. Take with you of all food that is eaten, and gather it to yourself, and it shall be for food for you and for the animals. Note something important here. It was not God who miraculously provided the food inside the ark. It was Noah's responsibility to collect and store it all before entering the ark. This means there was a period of intense preparation, even before the flood began. But how much food would be needed? To get an idea, consider that the ark remained closed for more than 370 days in total. That's more than 12 months of provisions. If we calculate just a conservative estimate, considering the different sizes and needs of the animals, we're talking about tons and tons of food that needed to be collected, processed, and stored in a way that wouldn't spoil during all that period. Here comes a detail that complicates the situation even further. The Bible reveals in Genesis chapter 7, verse 2, that not all animals enter the ark in equal quantities. Of every clean animal you shall take 7 and 7, male and female, but of the animals that are not clean, 2, male and female. 7 pairs of clean animals, only 1 pair of unclean animals. This means that Noah had many more clean animals to feed than we normally imagine. Why this difference? The answer becomes clear at the end of the story. When Noah left the ark, Genesis chapter 8, verse 20 records that Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. The extra animals were necessary because some would be sacrificed when everything was over, but this also meant more mouths to feed during the journey. The Hebrew word used in Genesis chapter 6, verse 21 for food is makal, which refers specifically to food suitable for consumption. It wasn't just any organic material, it was exactly the right kind of food for each species. Grains for some animals, leaves and branches for others, dried fruits, seeds, roots, each group of animals with their specific nutritional needs that had to be met. And there's more. All this food needed to be stored on the 3 floors of the ark, along with the animals themselves, without occupying all the available space. It needed to be organized so that Noah and his family could easily access it to distribute the daily meals. And above all, it needed to be preserved without refrigeration, without chemical preservatives for more than a whole year. But how did 8 people manage to feed thousands of animals every day? How did they divide these tasks? And above all, how did they manage to maintain order among the animals themselves during this forced confinement? If you ever gone through a difficult period where you didn't know how you would be able to support your family, comment, "God is my provision." Think about the family you love most. Now imagine being locked up with these people in a closed space for more than 10 months, unable to go out for a walk, unable to visit other relatives, unable to have a moment of real privacy. Just you, day after day, week after week, month after month. Modern studies show that prolonged confinement can generate extreme stress, family conflicts, and even depression, even among people who love each other. How did Noah's family manage to maintain harmony during this impossible period? The answer may lie in the very specific composition of this family and in a dynamic that the Bible subtly reveals. The ark housed exactly 8 people.
Genesis 7, verse 7 accurately records, "And Noah went in, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him, into the ark." Let's analyze who these people were. Noah was 600 years old when he entered the ark. His wife, although her age is not mentioned, was probably in a similar age range. The 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were already adult men and married, and their 3 wives completed the group. Here we have an interesting family dynamic. 2 generations living together in the same space. Fathers-in-law and daughters-in-law, sisters-in-law among themselves, adult brothers who perhaps already had their own well-defined personalities and opinions. Anyone who has ever organized a large family gathering knows the potential for conflict that exists in this situation, even under normal conditions. But the conditions in the ark were far from normal. They were not only confined among themselves, they were surrounded by thousands of animals that they needed constant care. The noise had to be incessant, the smell inevitable, the need for urgent and continuous work. There was no way for a family member to simply take a break from the others when the tension increased. And there is another factor that makes the situation even more impressive. Genesis 7, verse 16, makes it clear that the Lord shut them in from the outside. They did not control when they could leave. They could not open the door when they wanted to get some fresh air or have a moment alone.
The decision of when to leave the ark was completely out of their hands. How did 8 people manage to live together in harmony under these extreme conditions? The answer may lie in a fundamental characteristic that the Bible highlights about Noah. He was a righteous and blameless man in his generations and walked with God, as Genesis 6 verse 9 records. This suggests that Noah's leadership in the family went beyond the common patriarchal authority and time. There was probably a clear division of responsibilities among the 8 family members. Noah as leader, coordinating general activities, his 3 sons taking on different areas of animal care, the 4 women organizing food preparation, cleaning, and other domestic needs. A well-organized family structure would be essential to avoid conflicts and ensure that all tasks were completed. But one crucial question remains. How did they manage to keep thousands of wild animals in order for all that time? How did they prevent predators from attacking their prey? How did they deal with animals that are normally aggressive or territorial? Lions alongside gazelles, wolves coexisting with sheep, eagles sharing space with small birds. For more than 10 months, predators and prey coexisted in the same enclosed environment without a single fatal attack. This completely contradicts the natural instincts of these animals. In nature, a lion cannot stay near prey without attacking. It's impossible. But inside the ark, something extraordinary happened, which completely changed the behavior of all these creatures. When you discover what really happened to the animals during this period, you will understand that there was an intervention far beyond what we can explain. The organization of the animals in the ark followed a very specific pattern that God established. But here is the most impressive detail about the animals entering the ark. They came of their own accord. Genesis 6, verse 20, reveals something extraordinary. Of the birds after their kind, and of the animals after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind. Of all these, 2 of every kind shall come to you to keep them alive. Note the expression, shall come. The animals went to Noah voluntarily. This contradicts everything we know about wild animal behavior. Wild animals naturally flee from human presence. Predators are territorial and aggressive. Many species are nocturnal and are rarely seen during the day. However, representatives of all species on Earth walked to the ark and entered it in an orderly fashion. Something was influencing their behavior in a way that goes beyond natural instincts. Genesis 7 verses 8 and 9 describe the entry of clean animals and of unclean animals and of birds and of every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. They entered 2 by 2 to Noah into the ark, male and female, as God had commanded Noah. The entry was organized in pairs, following exactly the divine instructions. There was no chaos, no escape, no attacks between predators and prey. During the more than 10 months they spent confined in the ark, all these animals remained alive. This is implied in the biblical account, since they left the ark to repopulate the earth. But think about what this means. Thousands of animals of different species, many of them naturally aggressive or territorial, coexisted in the same space without destroying each other. Lions that normally hunt zebras did not attack the zebras on the ark. Venomous snakes did not bite other animals. Birds of prey did not hunt small rodents. Throughout this period, predatory instincts seem to have been suspended, as if a supernatural peace had been established among all creatures. Genesis 8, verse 19, confirms that every animal, every reptile, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth, according to their families, came out of the ark. All survived, all species remained intact. This was only possible because something far beyond human capacity was controlling the situation inside the ark. But how did Noah know that it was finally safe to leave that vessel after all that time confined? How could he be sure that the outside world was ready to receive all those creatures again? If you believe that God still cares for people today as he cared for Noah, comment, "He cares for me." More than 10 months without seeing the sun directly. More than 10 months looking only through a 45-centimeter window and seeing water on all sides. More than 10 months without setting foot on solid ground, without feeling grass on his feet, without breathing truly fresh air. How would you know that it was finally safe to abandon the only shelter you had? How could you be sure that you were making a fatal mistake by exposing your family and thousands of animals to a world that might not be ready again?
Noah developed a testing method that demonstrates impressive practical wisdom, and that would reveal step by step whether life had truly returned to Earth. 40 days after the mountain peaks became visible through the small window of the ark, Noah made a courageous decision. Genesis 8, verse 6 records the moment. "And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made." This was the first time in over 10 months that that window was opened with a specific purpose beyond simply allowing light and air in. Noah did not open the window on impulse or out of desperation. He waited a full 40 days after seeing the first signs of dry land before making any move. This shows extraordinary patience and caution. He was not willing to risk everyone's safety based solely on hopes or assumptions. The first test involved a raven. Genesis 8, verse 7 records the moment. "And Noah released a raven that flew away laughing and returning until the waters had dried up from the earth." The raven's behavior was very specific. It would leave the raven would fly for some time, exploring the outside, and then return. This pattern repeated itself for an extended period. What was this raven's behavior revealing to Noah? Ravens are scavenger birds, meaning they feed mainly on decaying flesh. The fact that the raven could go back and forth indicated that it was finding enough food outside to survive, but still considered the ark a safe place to return to. This suggested that there was dry land and carcass remains available, but perhaps the conditions were not yet ideal for completely abandoning the vessel. 7 days after the first test with the raven, Noah decided to do a second test, this time using a dove. The choice of a dove was strategic. Doves have different needs than ravens. They need fresh vegetation, signs of renewed plant life, not just carcasses to survive on. Genesis 8, verse 9 records the result of the first test with the dove. The dove, however, found no resting place for the sole of its foot and returned to him into the ark because the waters were on the face of the whole earth. The dove returned because it did not find a suitable place to land permanently. Its needs were not being met out there. Noah did not give up. He waited 7 more days and sent out the dove again. This time, something extraordinary happened. Genesis 8, verse 11 records that the dove returned to him in the evening, and behold, in its beak was plucked an olive leaf. A fresh olive leaf. This was the definitive proof that vegetation was growing again. Plant life had returned to earth. But even so, Noah did not rush. He waited another 7 days and sent out the dove a third time. Genesis 8, verse 12 reveals the final result. Then he waited another 7 days and sent out the dove, which did not return to him. The dove had found permanent conditions to live outside. Only then did Noah know that it was safe. After more than a year of confinement, the tests finally confirmed that the world was ready to receive again all the creatures that had survived inside the ark. Click here on the screen to discover what really happened to the people who stayed outside the ark during the flood.